Hi everyone, welcome to my week 4 discussion board presentation for MPA 594. In this presentation, I'll be going over a comparison between a public sector versus a private sector organization. For my comparison, I decided to do water agencies. I would say that the vast majority of people obtain their potable drinking water and their wastewater services by publicly owned and publicly ran water municipalities or water districts. But there are some water districts or cities that rely or contract out those services to private water agencies. Um, if we're here in this an example, Veolia is a very well-known one in the water industry. So they can either be contracted out to run the city's water processing plants or wastewater treatment plants, and they hire their own staff, and everything's hands off by the city, and the city just pretty much pays them like a contracting fee for them to run the facilities, as opposed to the city or government agency running all the aspects of the water agency. Graham Allison posed the question whether public and private agencies are alike in all unimportant respects. I think he has a point there. In my example between the public and private water agencies, while ultimately their goal is going to be appear to be the same, to provide clean, safe, potable drinking water, or to properly treat and disinfect wastewater. Their underlying incentives and goal settings are slightly different. Public agencies, they're not out to make a profit, while private agencies are indeed trying to make a profit at the end of the day. So the way they get to their ultimate goal vary differently. And the three different themes that I'm going to go over that kind of showcase the differences between the two, between public and private, is efficiency, accountability, and decision making. I think it goes without saying that Max Weber's bureaucracy plays a big role in the efficiencies within public agencies. The clear chain of command and hierarchy within the agency allows for a clear line of communication between managers, supervisors to their employees. The same can be said with the private sector municipalities. They're structured in the same way. They have their different departments. But I think where they deviate from one another is, I think the public sector is a bit more open to communication with its employees. I believe its fail would fit a lot more, would fit in better with public sector, in that the clear instructions and better communication between employees and management allows for more motivation in the workforce towards the goal of giving the best product uh, to their customers, the taxpayers, versus in the private sector, their end goal is making a profit, right? The bottom line, they got to make a profit. So instead of relying on feedback from employees, managers and executives already know what the profit margins need to be. So their directives or instructions are very top-down oriented, which is more of a Taylor-esque scientific management approach, where the managers or the executives know the best plan of attack in order to complete their tasks and their ultimate goal of providing clean and safe water, but they'll make decisions in order to better profit, in order to have better profit margins. For accountability with water agencies, I like to go back and start with the Declaration of Independence, where it stated that all people have unalienable rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And, that can mean many different things to different people. Later on with the Bill of Rights, you had amendments such as freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and the right to bear arms. But nowhere in these early documents does it say anything about the right to clean and safe drinking water. So as the United States progressed through the Industrial Revolution and into the 21st century, it became very clear of the concerns of industry polluting waterways in the United States, making it unsafe for drinking purposes or for consumption by regular citizens. So along came the federal government, and in 1972 they passed the Clean Water Act. And it's been amended a few more times since then, but essentially the federal government mandated a base level of water treatment for polluting waters before they enter any surface waters in the United States, thus helping minimize the number of contaminants or pollutants entering waterways that are publicly available or easily accessible to the public community. Now, with this federal law, we have the Environmental Protection Agency, which oversees and regulates the law through all the states. But here we could see a bit of Morton's rethinking of federalism, where you have your big boss, the Environmental Protection Agency, setting down basic guidelines and minimum requirements for all states and water agencies to follow for water treatment. But then you have your states that have to follow at least the minimum requirements by the federal law, but the states, such as in California, they can make their laws and regulations a lot more stricter to further remove more pollutants and contaminants from wastewaterways. So in this example, you have a dual federalism where you have your EPA, but you also have in the state of California the California Water Board's Resources Control Board that work together but in their own lanes. But then you also have water agencies within the cities and counties where they have to meet both the federal and any stricter regulations from the state. So that's more of a cooperative federalism example. And again, public agencies are ultimately accountable to their customers, the citizens, or the community that they serve, whereas private sector, they're ultimately accountable to their shareholders in order to make the profit margins to make them successful. Finally, for decision making, we could look at Gulick's Principles of POSCorp in conjunction with Mary Parker Follett's concepts of open communication and dialogue and sharing of power between workers and management. Together, it allows for better organizing and planning for long-term projects that are ultimately going to better suit the needs of the customers. But because there's so many more people involved in this process, you get what Lindblom stated as incremental progress or muddling through. So you get small progression or changes over time, but it's a lot more fine-tuned and detailed. So at the end of the day, the customers get the benefit of a very thorough and well thought out plan. Versus in private sector, they don't necessarily have to go through all these steps or have to include so many people. Again, it's very top-down heavy, and they'll make decisions based on profit margins. So if they have to make a decision between buying a new piece of equipment to better treat the water, but it's not effective, or it's not inducive to their profit margin, they might forego the investment in that piece of equipment. Versus in public sector, if it's determined that it's it's a investment, a high cost investment, but ultimately it's going to benefit the customers, then that's a purchase that they would ultimately make. Thank you for watching. I hope everyone had a great week.